but my title's clear, I don't need that. And I sit back, homie, better pick your picture, put your feet up, look up to the holy set, the holy grail is me coming with a pack, with a bang, with a gang, and I see that vest.
Queens, all you beautiful people out there, beautiful watchers, I don't know, I feel like I need to come up with a new title for you guys, because consequently, another artist I like, and I didn't realize has a title of a song called Kings and Queens, and it's not intentional, it was literally just a coincidence. So if you want me to come up with a new name for you, royalty, I don't know, whatever you'd like. Anyways, I'm kind of going to redo my video on hip-hop and its beginnings all over again, just because I feel personally the quality of that video is not great, but also I have most of it learned off of my head, and I also want to give you samplings of said music. At the moment, the song I'm playing is Mr. KYB's Element featuring Dreddy. Check him out. His song's on SoundCloud and Spotify, so shout out to him. So I'm going to kick into the video. Parental advisory, I will be mentioning things like misogyny and homophobia to a certain degree, but as well as history. So if you're interested in that or don't know much about hip-hop, I'm going to kick into it. It is probably my fourth favorite genre. My favorites tend to be K-pop, J-rock, indie music, indie rock music I love, and alternative pop. So hip-hop has always been kind of a reoccurring thing in my life. I used to absolutely hate UK rap, but I think with the exceptions of Skepta and maybe a few Lethal Bizzle tracks and stuff, especially with Shaka, oh my goodness, I never realized how much I enjoyed it. But let's go to the history of hip-hop. Now, hip-hop as a genre started a lot in the late 70s, early 80s, in the inner city parts of New York, especially in a lot of Hispanic but mostly black neighborhoods, especially Brooklyn or the Bronx, that area. It often had an electronic base to it. You'd have somebody DJing, and then somebody else in the background, you know, rapping over the beats. It had more of a freestyle element to it. Though I should differentiate between free verse and freestyle. Free verse is off the top of your head. Freestyle means you could have wrote the song 10 minutes ago, but if it doesn't go with the flow, it will sound bad anyway. So that's how it developed a lot in the early days. It was just a lot of inner city kids talking about their struggles, and a lot of it had more electronic based and sounded a lot more like the music of its time. So that's why you had like the likes of the Sugar Hill Gang and A Tribe Called Quest, or it was more in the 90s, but here nor there. So that's where it started, at least in the 80s. It wasn't extremely mainstream either, at all either. I guess in the later 80s you did with LL Cool J and the likes, and NWA later in the 90s, but for the most part, it was very insular to the US. And obviously there was controversies, because if you're talking about a trigger warning or content warning for, like, you know, violence, sex, drugs, or women later on, that's going to cause rife, especially in what I guess is usually dubbed white America, mainstream America. Whereas the 90s was all about that gangster rap. It was about being, you know, our lifestyle, the struggles, especially a lot of the political and social climate in the US with the Rodney King riots, with gun issues in a lot of these impoverished areas, you know, so rappers started talking about this, and it started to take more appeal, especially probably one of the most notable people, and if you've seen Straight Outta Compton, that'd be the best representation of it. But if you want to know, it's about Ice Cube, Eazy, and a few other people, Dr. Dre and a few other people kind of starting this group called Straight Outta Compton. Now, their music, even Dre admits this, was rather misogynistic and homophobic at parts. However, it definitely was a reflection of the reality of which they were living, which was violent and did have police brutality and did have all these issues. But ironically, which I find funny when the trailer was on MTV, who didn't play their music at the time, made them even more popular to them more. Now, it also had a downside to all this, you know, the whole East Coast, West Coast thing, and, you know, the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, who were very prominent rappers in the 90s. Now, there was plenty of other kind of rap slash R&B artists. You know, you had TLC, you had Snoop Dogg, you had, oh, there's so many groups, though, and artists out there. You had Tech Nine, you had Rakim, you had so many rappers in the 90s. Granted, I grew up listening to more 2000s music, not actually a result of my father, just what was on the music channels at the time. So the 50 Cent's, Jay-Z's, Kanye's of the world, kind of, not consistently, because my parents had a very strong thing about listening to music that had explicit language in it and tends to be censored on TV. So that's where it grew. The way I describe hip-hop, and this is for all you Great Gatsby fans here, and if I can find the comment that said this, I would. the way hip hop developed, at least by the 90s, where it was becoming more global, it wasn't just the US now, before we hit into the 2000s, is that it was by a certain degree. But I also mentioned the downside, like I said, with a lot of the gang wars and gang violence. Because the thing is, you can take the person out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the person. It's that mentality that's the hardest thing to change. Because the one thing, and going on to, before I go on to 2000s hip hop, is that hip hop is new money. It's not old money, I guess, like the likes of maybe classical music or to a certain degree, I guess, certain pop music. It's it's new money. It's loud. It's in your face. It's braggadocious. It's the come up. It's the American dream. You can make it here. You can make it anywhere, basically. Especially, we all hear the story about the rags to riches. That's hip hop in a nutshell, and it is a very predominantly black art. I'd say outside of maybe elements of jazz and I guess certain rock stars, it's probably one of the few genres that is a predominantly that predominantly has black people in it. Now that's changed in the last 20 years a lot. It's become a global phenomenon. Every top 20 track now tries to at least have one rap or at least elements of R&B and hip hop in it right now. I mean, pop's still killing at the moment, but even it has evolved a lot. Now, going into 2000s hip hop, where you had 50 Cent, you had the Kanye West, you had the Jay Z's, you had Eminem, who was again coming out in the late 90s, you had the Outkast, you had more than just East Coast, West Coast, you had the Midwest with Kanye West, Common, you know, artists like that. You had the South, where you had the likes of Outkast, who are probably one of my favorite groups ever. Because they had their own style, they had their own swag. You knew who Outkast were. Everyone has heard Hey Ya. Like, even if you despise hip hop, everyone's heard Hey Ya. Everybody. You still had the stronghold in New York where hip hop started, and you had the West Coast G Funk sound to it as well. Regulate. That was Warren G's song. God, I forgot that one in Black Street. Beside the point. But this is where we get into the bling bling area. This is where we get into the Great Gatsby era. This is where we get into the braggadocious and fun nature of hip hop. Because, like I said, it's the epitome of the American dream. Having a college education was not necessary. If you could rap and grind and actually have an audience, that mattered. But I think the other thing is that it uplifted a lot of those people who came from the poor areas to actually become millionaires, to become businessmen, do endorsement deals with like the likes of Nike, have your own Cavassiers. I'm sorry, I just had to reference that song by P. Diddy in it. You know, because I Busta Rhymes and people like that. You had games like 50 Cent, love him or hate him. I'm personally not a fan of him on a personal level, but he had his own clothing label, he had a game, he had watches, he's even executive producer on the series Power, which ended recently, you know? It allowed a lot of those things. Now, it still had its strife because even I, as somebody who has listened to hip hop kind of not as much within the last 5 years, but definitely on and off with my teen years, there has always been issues with misogyny and homophobia. Now, it's not the only genre to have this, but of all of them, it's definitely been effective. And to be honest, a lot of that I root in religiosity personally, because a lot of black people do tend to be more religious, and to a certain extent, societal and cultural reasons as well. But the thing is, that's also changed when we had the likes of Little Kim. The difference is she wasn't like a lot of 90s female rappers like Queen Latifah and I guess to a certain extent Missy Elliott, who were kind of the more boyish and out there, you know, rappers who weren't as popular. She was like, I'm sexy and I can rap better and if not as good as all of y'all. Y'all can talk about all the women you fucked or slept with. Well, I'm the one taking control, and really she paved the way for a lot of them. Her and Foxy Brown would probably say. That's why we have these Megan Thee Stallions, these Doja Cats, these Dreezys, these Cash Doll, though they're all individually beautiful and great in their own way, but she really paved the way for that. Even Nicki Minaj, like, give credit where credit's due. And I'm not even talking about these celebs from a personal level, whether I love them or hate them. Now, the 2010s, again, it's still reminiscent of the previous decade. However, we're getting into more trap beats. We're getting into more, I guess, SoundCloud sounds, emo sounds, all those sort of stuff. Not that there isn't that rags to riches story, but like to an extent, it is fronting. I mean, 2 Chainz, he went to college. J. Cole, you know, he has a degree in business and communications. Now, some of them still will talk about the real life struggle, like Kendrick Lamar, like Lupe Fiasco. I guess he was also a 2000 rapper who will still talk about that conscious rap that's talking about societal issues, you know what I mean? But I'm sorry if I forget any artists there, but it's definitely taken a change because though it's still somewhat braggadocious, at the same time, it's also still, it's changed in terms of the trap beats. And like I said, it's got more popular due to the likes of YouTube and the evolution of a lot of social media sites. It allowed people to listen to music, not just what the TV or broadcasters could say. YouTube was kind of revolutionary in that as well. Like Soldier Boy didn't become popular out of nowhere. Even TikTok, for as much shit as I'll give it in real life, a lot of songs got more popular as a result of it, or people know about it. Like, the only reason I know Renegade is because I've heard it off of TikTok, off of friends and stuff like that. That's the difference. Some of it still does the sex, money, drugs, and hope, but some of it, like I said, can be very conscious, where it's talking about personal struggles, drugs, alcohol, all those non-PG things, and content warning for that I'll try to insert in this video. But it allows for a lot of that. It's become global now. Even me, who was a K-pop head, like, there's another ground rap scene in Seoul. I didn't even know this, you know what I mean? Even likes of Raja Kumori, who I was listening to, even different rappers. I'm happy it's become more international now, and it takes so many forms than just the traditional money, sex, and drugs, you know what I mean? Because that's not everyone's reality. That's the truth of it all. I'm especially happy with the rise of a lot of female MCs. And yeah, some of them do have to use sex and do use sex to uplift themselves, but and some of it is objectifying, but some of it I know it's just them being their authentic selves. The only ones I can think that are relatively non-sexual, one of them might be more explicit in language, is probably Rico Nasty or Lady Lisher. Like, I love her music, honestly, at the most. We had other groups like Black Eyed Peas and everything, but that's where the point where hip hop has become so popular. Even if you never grew up listening to hip hop, well, I kind of did on and off, like I said. You know a couple tracks. Everybody knows Eminem. Everybody knows Migos. Love them or hate them. I like Stir Fry personally. They're popular now. It has more ad libs. It has more trap beats. It has all these. Every major pop artist has at least 3 or 4 tracks, probably with one hip hop artist on it, even if they have one verse. Even Taylor Swift had Kendrick on her track, and Kendrick, J. Cole, I'd say probably were one of the more like notable conscious rappers out there, if that's such a thing. There's other ones out there like Khan and God, there's so many of them. So forgive me if I don't mention them at all, but I'll definitely link a lot of them below in the description if that's the case. So that's where we got with hip hop so far. Now there's still more up and coming rappers, as the one that's been playing throughout this video. But in saying all this, I'm happy for it, and I hope this continues on. And in another separate video, I might specify phobia still exists, but that's also changing with a lot more LGBT and women rappers out there. I think Saucy Santana is one of the few gay rappers I can think of out there, and Kevin Abstract from Brockhampton. So let's hope this keeps changing, it keeps evolving. Because the thing is, the music's not completely just about their identity, it's about them, and that's what we like. And the other thing, like I referenced in my mental health video, rappers are grinding 10 times harder now. Not obviously right now due to the coronavirus, but there's much more of a need for social interaction. There's far more of a need to promote oneself. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, it's grind, grind, grind. And that's what's happening with a lot of celebs these days. So, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching, and anything else I might mention in later videos. But, see ya!